When Sarah and Jack got engaged, they thought they were starting a new chapter together. But when Sarah declared that she wanted their children to carry only her last name, because Jack's last name wasn't right, everything changed. What began as a simple conversation spiraled into the toughest challenge their relationship had ever faced, testing love, identity, and family traditions in ways neither expected. This is the story of navigating love and legacy in modern America. Sarah and Jack had met on a crisp autumn evening in New York City, the kind where the leaves were turning gold and the air held a subtle promise of change. Both in their late 20s, they were from different worlds yet shared common dreams, building a life filled with love, respect, and understanding. Sarah was a passionate lawyer fighting for social justice, and Jack was a graphic designer with an eye for detail and a heart full of creativity. Their relationship blossomed quickly, fueled by honest conversations and endless laughter. When Jack proposed one chilly winter night under the glow of twinkling city lights, Sarah said yes without hesitation. But a few weeks before their wedding, a conversation came that neither of them was prepared for. "I've been thinking about the future," Sarah began, her voice steady but cautious. "When we have kids, I want them to carry my last name." Jack blinked, surprised. "Just yours? Not both?" Sarah nodded. "Yes. I want our children to have my last name only. Jack's last name. It just doesn't feel right to me." Jack tried to mask his shock, but her words hit deeper than he expected. "Why do you say that?" Sarah took a breath. "It's not about disrespecting you, Jack. It's just, my family has a legacy I want preserved. And honestly, your last name sounds old-fashioned, hard to pronounce, and it doesn't really reflect our values." Jack felt a sting in his chest. Family names were a big deal in his family too, representing history, identity, and roots. To him, it wasn't just a label. It was part of who he was. "I never thought the last name would matter this much," Jack admitted. "It matters to me," Sarah said firmly. "And I hope you can understand." The conversation spiraled from there. What seemed like a small request touched deep insecurities, cultural tensions, and questions about identity neither was ready to face. Jack found himself wondering if this was just the beginning of bigger cracks. Over the coming days, they tried to navigate this tense new territory. Friends and family weighed in, some supportive, others baffled. Jack's mother found it hard to accept, feeling her son's heritage was being erased. Sarah's sister cheered her bravery. In the middle of it all, Jack and Sarah struggled to find common ground. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Jack sat alone in their apartment, turning over the idea in his mind. He loved Sarah with all his heart, but this felt like a battle over the very essence of their future. Was it possible to honor both their identities? Or was this something no compromise could solve? The story of love, family, and legacy was just beginning, and the answer was far from clear. The days that followed Sarah's declaration were charged with an intensity neither Jack nor Sarah had anticipated. What began as a simple preference soon became a crack in the foundation of their relationship. Jack found himself wrestling with a storm inside, a mixture of hurt, pride, and confusion. The last name, something once trivial, was now the symbol of something bigger: respect, identity, and belonging. Every conversation felt like walking on thin ice. One evening, Sarah and Jack sat across from each other in their apartment, the silence stretching too long before Jack finally spoke. "I still don't get it, Sarah," he said quietly. "Why does it have to be only your last name? Why not hyphenate? Or combine? Or even mine?" Sarah's eyes darkened with frustration. "Because, Jack, it's not just about hyphenation or combination. It's about what our children will carry forward. It's about the legacy I want them to embrace." Jack leaned forward, voice firm. "But my name, my family's name, carries its own legacy too." "You're talking like it doesn't even matter." Sarah's voice sharpened. "It doesn't reflect who we are. It's old, stuck in the past." Jack's chest tightened. The words felt like a dagger, not just to his pride but to the very essence of his heritage. "How am I supposed to feel?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Like I'm invisible in my own family?" The pain in Jack's voice echoed in the room, and Sarah's anger melted into a heavy sadness. Neither knew how to bridge the widening gap. The conversation ended abruptly, each retreating into their own thoughts. Over the following days, the tension seeped into every interaction. Friends noticed the strain, family members offered unsolicited opinions, and social media trends about family names flooded their feeds, only adding fuel to the fire. Jack's mother called, her voice trembling with hurt. Your father's name means everything to us. To throw it aside for what? Convenience. Sarah's sister texted words of support, urging Sarah to stand firm. Caught between two worlds, Jack and Sarah felt more isolated than ever. Late one night, Jack paced their apartment, haunted by the possibility of losing Sarah over a name. Was love enough to overcome the weight of tradition, identity, and expectation? Or were they building a future doomed by unresolved battles over the past? The weeks trudged on, and with each day, the fractures between Sarah and Jack stretched wider and deeper. The last name debate became the battleground for unspoken fears and insecurities. Jack avoided meeting Sarah's gaze. Sarah struggled to hide her frustration. When they tried to plan their wedding, the unresolved tension cast a shadow over joyous moments, turning celebrations into negotiations and smiles into sighs. Friends began to take sides, some urging Jack to stand firm, others championing Sarah's vision of progress and equality. One afternoon, at a family gathering, the tension erupted. Jack's father, a stern man rooted in tradition, voiced what everyone else had been avoiding. If you don't want to honor our family name, then what does that say about your respect for us? He demanded sharply. Sarah's response was measured but resolute. It's about giving our children the name that represents who we truly are today, not who we were a century ago. Voices raised. Accusations flew. Jack's mother wept quietly. Sarah's parents exchanged worried looks. Jack stood frozen, torn between love and loyalty, caught in a brutal tug-of-war. After the gathering, Jack found himself questioning everything. Could he marry a woman who rejected something so fundamental to him? Could Sarah compromise her ideals for the sake of peace? As the days passed, the distance grew. Sarah found solace in late-night walks through the city, seeking clarity beneath the stars. Jack withdrew into work, burying his heartache in design projects that no longer brought him joy. The dream they had shared felt fragile, slipping through their fingers like sand. Each wondered if this was the beginning of the end, or the crucible through which their love would be forged anew. The longer the silence between Sarah and Jack lasted, the heavier the weight on their hearts became. Their once warm apartment now felt cold and distant, filled with unspoken words and unresolved tension. One rainy evening, after a long day filled with unrelenting stress, Sarah decided it was time to confront the growing divide between them. She sat Jack down, her eyes tired but determined. "We can't keep going like this," she said softly. "This fight over the last name, it's tearing us apart." Jack looked at her, raw emotion flickering in his eyes. "I love you, Sarah," he whispered, "but this feels like you're asking me to give up a piece of myself." Sarah reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I don't want to take anything from you. I want us both to feel proud of the family we're creating." But Jack shook his head. "It's not that simple. My family name is everything. It's my history, my identity." The conversation spiraled into a heated argument, anguished words, tearful confessions, and passionate pleas. Both were hurting deeply, neither willing to back down. The fight lasted long into the night, leaving them exhausted and broken. Days later, Jack visited his parents, seeking solace and advice. His father's unwavering insistence on tradition only deepened Jack's inner turmoil. Back at home, Sarah faced her own doubts. Had she been too harsh? Too idealistic? Despite the love they shared, the chasm between them seemed insurmountable. Their once unbreakable bond now threatened by a name. Amidst the darkness of their struggle, a moment of clarity emerged. During a quiet morning walk in the park, Sarah reflected on everything they had endured. She realized that love alone couldn't erase the pain caused by dismissing Jack's feelings. Determined to heal, she called Jack and asked to meet. They sat on a park bench under a canopy of autumn leaves, the crisp air filled with tentative hope. "I want to find a way forward," Sarah began. "Not just for me but for us." Jack nodded slowly. "I've been holding on to pride, but I don't want to lose you." For the first time in weeks, they spoke honestly. Not about names or legacies, but about their feelings, fears, and dreams. Jack shared memories of his childhood, the significance of his family name, and his fear of being forgotten. Sarah opened up about her desire to honor her heritage and the value she wanted to pass on. Together, they started exploring compromises. Hyphenations, middle names, even entirely new options. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a start. Hope flickered. They realized that their love was bigger than any name. It was about partnership, respect, and most importantly, understanding. As they walked home hand in hand, the future still uncertain, they knew one thing for sure: they were willing to fight for each other. Sarah and Jack's conversation in the park had shifted something unspoken between them. As days rolled into weeks, they both committed to finding a shared path, a way to balance their histories, identities, and love. It wasn't easy. More than once, old fears crept back, and frustrations flared. Yet, they communicated more openly than before, making room for honest dialogue and vulnerability. They sought advice from friends who had faced similar cultural conflicts, reading books and exploring traditions from both sides. They realized this wasn't just a fight over names. It was about acceptance, respect, and love. One night at dinner with Sarah's family, the topic stirred a meaningful discussion. "Every name carries a story," Sarah's grandmother said thoughtfully. "What matters is who you become with it, and the love that binds a family, not just the letters on paper." Even Jack's skeptical mother softened when she saw how deeply Jack and Sarah were trying to honor both families. They agreed to explore hyphenation, a compromise that seemed to reflect both their desires. At first, it felt unfamiliar and awkward, but as they imagined the future, the thought of their children carrying the combined legacy brought a new sense of unity. They also decided to create new traditions, blending customs from both sides, celebrating holidays, sharing stories, and inviting family members to participate with open hearts. The wedding planning resumed with renewed spirit, and this time, the joy was stronger than the tension. Sarah and Jack spent weekends designing invitations, choosing a venue, and crafting vows that spoke of respect, understanding, and partnership. The journey had transformed their love into something more profound, a connection not just of hearts but of histories, woven together by acceptance. One evening, after a long day, Jack found a note on the kitchen counter. "Thank you for fighting for us. Together, we are stronger than any name." He smiled, feeling hope bloom like never before. Their story was no longer one of conflict. It was becoming a testament to resilience and compromise. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, bursting with colors, laughter, and music. Friends and family gathered from near and far, excitement mingling with emotion. Sarah wore a simple but elegant gown, her eyes shining with happiness. Jack looked handsome and proud, a nervous smile playing on his lips. As they stood together in front of their loved ones, exchanging vows, they spoke not just of love but of unity and respect. "I promise to cherish your past as I build our future with you," Sarah said. Jack replied, "Our names represent who we are together, stronger as one." The ceremony was a celebration of two worlds blending, with hyphenated names spoken aloud to the applause of everyone present. Later, as they danced under twinkling lights, Sarah and Jack felt the weight of their journey lift, replaced by newfound hope. Despite challenges, they had chosen love and compromise. Their story was a beginning, one of respect, shared dreams, and a future bright with possibility. The early morning sun filtered gently through the curtains of Sarah and Jack's new home, casting warm light on a space filled with hopeful beginnings. The house was not just a place of shelter but a symbol of compromise, of growth, and of a love that had been tested but emerged stronger. They had just returned from their honeymoon, a quiet trip that had allowed them to breathe and reconnect after the intense months of conflict and resolution. The memory of their wedding day, the smiles exchanged, the vows spoken, the collective cheer of family and friends, still resonated deeply. Yet, the journey ahead was just beginning. Having faced the challenge of their last name debate head-on, Sarah and Jack understood that marriage was more than a ceremony. It was a commitment to continually adapt, respect, and nurture each other. Sarah's morning routine included sipping coffee while scrolling through messages from friends who had followed their story, people inspired by their honesty and willingness to work through difficult issues. Jack, meanwhile, spent his mornings in his studio, designing a new branding project that subtly incorporated symbols of both their cultural heritages. It was a creative outlet that also healed old wounds, blending history and modernity visually and emotionally. One afternoon, as they unpacked boxes in their home, Sarah paused to reflect on how much they had grown. What once threatened to divide them had forced them to look inward and ask difficult questions. What did it mean to carry a name? What did it mean to carry love? They decided that their children would carry a hyphenated last name, a blend that symbolized equal respect, a daily reminder that identity was complex but navigable through love and understanding. They planned to teach their children about the histories behind each name, the values embedded in them, and the importance of carrying both with pride. Their evenings were filled with laughter and stories as they invited family members over, bridging gaps that once seemed unbridgeable. Sarah made peace with Jack's parents, recognizing their fears but gently encouraging openness. Jack, in turn, learned to appreciate Sarah's insistence on honoring her lineage, seeing it not as rejection but as balance. Together, they launched community workshops focused on cultural identity, modern relationships, and navigating tradition, projects close to Sarah's heart as a lawyer and advocate. With each event, stories poured in, from couples wrestling with expectations, children with blended backgrounds, and families relearning how to love across differences. Sarah and Jack realized that their story was part of a larger mosaic, a reflection of a changing world where love and legacy intersected in new and sometimes challenging ways. It wasn't always easy. Arguments flared over minor things: how to celebrate holidays, which family to visit first, or how to blend foods and traditions. But each disagreement was met with respect, grounded in the lessons they had learned through their last name struggle. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching stars, Sarah reached out and took Jack's hand. "We've come so far," she said softly. Jack smiled. "And there's so much more ahead, with you." They both knew that life would continue to test them, sometimes gently, sometimes harshly. But now, they faced the future not as two separate people clinging to their pasts, but as partners weaving a shared tapestry. Their love, layered with history and hope, was a foundation resilient enough to withstand storms. It was a love story rewritten, not erased, by compromise and courage. And in that they found peace. In the quieter moments of reflection, Sarah and Jack often spoke about the lessons their journey had taught them. They realized how deeply names, traditions, and identity mattered, not just as symbols but as living parts of themselves. More importantly, they learned that love wasn't always about easy choices. Often, it was about hard conversations and vulnerability. They acknowledged that neither side had been wholly right or wrong but had navigated fear, pride, and hope. Their story was a reminder that respect must underpin every relationship, and that traditions could evolve without losing their meaning. They found strength in their differences, understanding that a name was not simply a word but a bridge connecting past, present, and future. And in embracing that complexity, they built a future richer than either had imagined. The night air was thick with silence as Sarah and Jack stood side by side on the balcony of their new home, looking out at the city that buzzed with life far below. The weight of their journey pressed down on them, heavy, exhausting, but strangely freeing. They had fought battles no one saw, battles of pride, identity, and legacy. Battles that had threatened to rip them apart. The simple question of a last name had unearthed wounds deeper than either expected. Wounds of family expectations, cultural pride, and personal insecurities. Jack's voice broke the quiet. "I never imagined it would come to this. That the name on our children's birth certificate would feel like a battlefield." Sarah looked at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "We almost lost everything. But maybe that's the cost of something real. Something worth fighting for." She reached out and took his hand, their fingers entwining like the roots of two different trees coming together. "We chose love over pride, understanding over stubbornness. That's what makes this name, our name, worth everything." Jack swallowed hard, the truth settling deep inside him. It wasn't about the name itself, letters on paper, but about what it represented, a future they would build together, brick by brick, story by story. "This isn't just a compromise," he said. "It's our promise. To honor who we are, separately and together. To heal what was broken. To keep fighting, not against each other, but for us." The night stretched around them, a vast space of possibility. They knew the road ahead would not always be easy. Old voices, old judgments, and old fears would sometimes whisper again. But they had become warriors of a new kind, stronger because they had faced the fiercest battle, the battle within themselves. Sarah rested her head against Jack's shoulder. "Whatever comes next, we face it as one." Jack closed his eyes, holding on tightly, not just to her hand, but to the fragile, fierce hope they had forged together. And as the city lights flickered like distant stars, they whispered their final vow, not just in words but in every beat of their hearts. Together, always.